Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another Marvel Snap video. So you may notice that my layout is a little bit different, or my background is a little bit different. So I switched computers, I switched location, somewhere a little bit more permanent. So hopefully I'll be able to bring higher quality, visually higher quality content to you guys. So with that being said, today's deck is a large minion deck. We have kind of went back to our roots. This is what we used to finish off our climb from 70 to 100 at the beginning of this season. And the reason we shied away from it was we started getting mirror matches where we were going against basically the same thing, or people started teching in Shang-Chi to almost all of their decks. So Shang-Chi can completely obliterate one of these lanes, because if you're stacking it with 3-4 high power cards, a Shang-Chi can completely just override your entire lane and then swing the game. But with the meta shifting towards Swarm instead, we are seeing things like Wave played a lot more often. We're seeing things like Killmonger, a lot less Shang-Chi. And so we want to capitalize on that. We want to use what other people are doing to our advantage. So we want to potentially use their wave where they're trying to slow us down a little bit, and then drop a Hulk, drop a Magneto, drop an Odin, drop something very, very large, and kind of go against what they're hoping for. Okay, so running through the deck really quickly. We have Sunspot as our one drop because we're going to be passing quite a few turns. That can either cause them to target our Sunspot in trying to think we're a swarm deck, trying to target that high priority target. And then we end up dropping Lady Sif, Ghost Rider, Jubilee, some really big minions on them. Then we have a couple of combo pieces. We have Lady Sif and Ghost Rider. Lady Sif to discard one of our 5 6-cost cards, and then Ghost Rider to bring it back. Lockjaw is a new piece to our big mini deck, but he fits in so very well. Lockjaw, of course, when you play here, swap it with a card in your deck. So we're going to want to play either like a Sunspot. We could do the Lady Sif Ghost Rider combo here, and it'll switch those pieces out. We can then run the Lady Sif Ghost Rider combo again if we draw back into them. A lot of cool utility with that. And then the biggest target being Jubilee. We play Jubilee, it pulls in a card from our deck. Lockjaw then switches out Jubilee and puts Jubilee back into our deck. We can then redraw her, reuse her, but we also have a higher power minion in that lane than a 1-power card. And then we have Iron Man, who really helps to kind of staple certain lanes down. So maybe we have an Odin and a Lady Sif and a Ghost Rider. Iron Man can help swing that lane and at the same time kind of protect us from too much Shang-Chi power. We have Professor X in here just to sneak a lane. So if they drop a wave and we can anticipate where they're going to play, or let's say we drop a Lady Sif into a Lockjaw lane, we can draw into Professor X, completely lock out that lane, completely capitalize and win that lane, and then kind of go on and move from there. And then the rest are just the highest power 6 drops that we have. We have Odin, Chavez, Hulk, Magneto, and Infinite. And so that is the general idea of the deck. We are going to go ahead and jump in, and we will see you guys there. Okay, so we do get Wakanda Nemesis. We also draw into our Sunspot, which we can drop right off the bat. And they have a Sunspot as well, but they're 3-power Sunspots. And then our other cards are buffed up as well. So Death's Domain is a decent location for dropping a Jubilee. We can drop Jubilee or even a Ghost Rider, the second part of that combo, to sneak power into that lane. So nothing that we have to necessarily worry about in that location. It's just a little bit trickier to get power onto the board. And then Shadowland. So I'm going to drop Lockjaw before I drop Lady Sif. That way I can start cycling those tools out. I want to drop Lady Sif so that we can discard Hulk and then resummon him in Death's Domain. But at the same time, I want to cycle and get more upside out of this card slot than a 4-power card. So we're going to go ahead and drop Lady Sif. She will cycle into something large. Could be a Jubilee. It could be Magneto. Could be Odin. There's a lot of cards that it could be. Okay, and so our Lady Sif discards our Hulk. We then rotate him out. It pulls in Odin, which is not a great card to have put there, but it's not terrible either. And so they cycled a Juggernaut into Lady Sif, so they're stuck with Lady Sif in this lane. We do get our Lady Sif back, which is interesting. Not that we're going to necessarily use it, but it's interesting nonetheless. An interesting note about Lockjaw with Professor X, if we drop Professor X in a lane just naturally, then it will cycle him out, but it won't lock down the lane. It'll pull another card in, it'll have the effects of the lockdown, but it doesn't actually lock down that lane. So they discarded Death, which was 13. Our Hulk is 13 as well, so even if they drop a Ghost Rider here, we don't necessarily have to worry about that, because it should be the same level. Ooh, but they have Vision. Okay, so that makes it a little bit tougher, because they can always do a Ghost Rider here, resummon Death, and then we have to win these other 2 lanes. What do we have in deck? In deck we have Magneto, we have Infinite, then we have Jubilee E. So 1 out of 3 to completely tank this lane. I think we anticipate him moving Vision. And so instead, we're just going to drop Iron Man. It's going to turn this into a 20 power lane. This one will stay at 10, but if he shifts Vision out, then we should be okay. Okay, so he does shift Vision over into the left lane, which is kind of what we anticipated. Either that or into Death's domain. So he is going for the win in this right lane, but we, of course, pushed for the win in the left. And because he didn't compete in Death's domain with this card, oh, so it was 12. It wouldn't have been able to match our Death's domain. So overall, very, very solid. It's kind of a similar deck style that we were going up against, but we were able to kind of hold our own. Oh, so next up we have Miller, and we got a pretty high roll in the fact that it pulled in our Iron Man. Okay, so we draw into our more consistent pieces, the pieces that are really going to push us over the edge here, and that being Lockjaw, Lady Sif, which will be able to be cycled. We're going to be able to kind of pump out and sneak out additional high power cards that they wouldn't really be able to compete with unless they have a Shang-Chi. So they do drop an Elektra. Not a huge downside. That tells me they're probably running a wide deck or a swarm deck. So this time we are going to drop... We're going to drop a Lockjaw into the vault. That way we can push out a lot of power there, because they're not going to be able to drop anything late game. And that way we can kind of cap it out and then focus on other lanes. And so we can either do a Jubilee to finish this one off, which I think is what we'll end up doing, or we can do the Lady Sif, which will rotate out. We could always do a Ghost Rider next turn, but I think we do Jubilee instead. We're gonna go ahead and snap, because I think we have this lane. I have a feeling we're gonna get Chavez, and then for some reason I think it's gonna be either Professor X or Infinite. And so then we can guarantee that one's locked down and they're not going to be able to touch it. So they drop a Sunspot, which we'll be able to grow, but I think we're going to have a big enough point advantage that I don't think it's going to be an issue. They'd have to skip a whole lot to get to 33. And so then we draw back into our Jubilee. So we can either use this to try to lock down a lane, because we have 2 cards left in our deck. We have Professor X, and then... That makes sense. Okay, so we're going up against the Nets. We get Hala. It is nice to sneak power in there if they invested some resources, to be able to kind of destroy those cards from their hand. It just depends on what we draw into. We can always drop Jubilee, but 11 power doesn't usually swing it enough to take that risk. So if they drop Angela and 3 1-drop cards, it usually ends up being around 17 power. And so we would want to be able to be competitive with that if we wanted to try and lock that down and compete. And I don't think we do. I think we drop our Sunspot here. We don't want to drop them into Mojo World, because if they are running a wide deck, they will most likely have Elektra, in which case they could swing Mojo World pretty easily, and we don't want to take that risk. So we have Ghost Rider in hand, we have Professor X in hand, so we're not going to have any like, oops, we discarded a card, or oops, we played Ghost Rider and we can't summon him back situations. So we're going to be able to cycle without fear of what we draw. So let's say we low roll and get our Lady Sif. That's going to discard a card for us. We're going to be able to do our Ghost Rider combo and be fine. And so actually, no, we're gonna draw into our Lady Sif. So I think we go for the high roll here. Let's go ahead and snap because we have the combination and they don't know that we do. So if we end up dropping Odin here, we'll be able to steal this lane, of course. Or do we? I almost wonder if we want to cycle to get 2 additional cards here to compete for the lane. We're going to go with locking down Hala. Mojo World may have been the play. I potentially thought about dropping Professor X there to try and lock it down, but it just didn't feel necessarily right. And so we're going to be able to drop 1 card max here. And so we're not competing for this lane, but we are going to draw a little bit of our power over there. So this would leave us at 23. Let's do this one instead. Let's do the Ghost Rider instead. That'll leave us at... Nope, let's leave them all, just in case they drop a Giganto. And then we play here. He dropped an Iron Man, so odds are he'll be able to swing this lane. And then he's investing all of his resources there, which is odd. Why are you... It feels like you're overcommitting to the lane, knowing that we had a lot of resources here. Okay, so we drew... That's not good. That's not good that we drew their cards over into a lane that is won purely by... the Onslaught Iron Man bonus was not going to be able to win these other 2 lanes. So interesting. But nonetheless, we were able to pull it out. But it seems like a hybrid of a wide deck, but has the identity of an ongoing. So maybe they're running something similar to where they have like Omega Red or Claw, and they're trying to kind of sneak power out onto the other lanes. And maybe they just didn't draw into all of the combo pieces. Either way, this deck really excels at either pushing a bunch of power very quickly out onto the board, or knowing that you're not going to be able to push that power out, and then being able to retreat, reset, jump back in. Where some decks kind of run into an issue is that you're not able to assess your end power versus the opponent's end power. And so if you think you might have a chance and you stay for an 8-cube game here and there, that can add up pretty quickly if you were accidentally dropping those games. I think we're going to drop our Lady Sif into Mojo World. If it drops Odin, we'll be able to, of course, do Ghost Rider and max out the lane at any point with just 3 mana. And so then we focus on the other lanes and we get Odin. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on either 1 or 2 of these other lanes so that we can surprise them with a full lane at the end of the game. So as it is now, they're going to be able to have this lane advantage just by having it full. But we're going to be able to fill it the rest of the way up with just 3 mana. So it'll be a really easy sneak that comes as a pretty big surprise a lot of the time. And so we're going to drop our Jubilee into Monster Metropolis. I'm kind of playing around with the idea of maybe dropping Professor X into Nowhere, depending on where he drops cards, to see if we can steal that one away. I don't know that we want to do that. We'll probably end up doing just... We probably should have summoned our Ghost Rider this turn, so we could manually summon him next turn. It's okay. So we do pull their card out of Nowhere, but I don't think we want to wait for next turn. So I'm going to go ahead and snap, let them know that I have the advantage. We're going to cap out. Probably could have snapped earlier as soon as we knew we had this combo. But I wanted to kind of give him a couple of turns to play and kind of get a feel for if he was going to be able to swing it or not. And I guess with the no on reveal, probably not. So they snapped right off the bat. So I don't know what they have, but I'm gonna kind of play it out and see what they're running. because they have Sunspot. Do they have like a Lady Sif Ghost Rider and they're real confident in it? They had Mr. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, friend. But you are not going to be able to be negative this game unless you have a Ghost Rider. But that in a negative deck is not very common. So I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry, friend. So do we go ahead and drop our Lady Sif? I know we dropped Odin before. Do we go ahead and drop our Lady Sif, drop our Ghost Rider into the same lane? We can either potentially resummon Odin or Iron Man. And I think we have enough high cost cards that it's okay if we thin our hand even further. I don't think that's a huge concern. We have Jubilee that we'll be able to drop either next turn, Magneto the following turn. So I think we go ahead and drop our Ghost Rider here just to... And if it is Odin, then we're going to go ahead and drop Magneto too, and then resummon him. Eee. Okay. Let's go ahead and roll the dice. So we get Iron Man. We get the low roll out of the 50%, which feels bad. But we can always drop one of the big cards there. We can always drop one of the big cards there on the following turn. So in our deck we have Chavez. So it's most likely going to pull Chavez. Do we drop that here? I'm not sure what they could be triggering with Wong, but it scares me. Every time I see Wong, I think of the Exodia combo where they just obliterate an entire board, and it is just unfair. So if they have an Odin, maybe they drop an Odin here, and then that's going to spit out 14. Do we ever do this? Or maybe, so is that a 3 cost card? It is. 3 and 4 cost cards. So they have priority. But if they drop a card here, what could they be dropping? They could drop a Gambit and it would trigger twice. I think this is what I want. No, I don't know. Because the idea is if we drop Magneto here, we can pull their Nakia over. We can swing this lane in our favor. Otherwise, if they drop a card here, it caps us out. We're not going to be able to pull anything over. We can potentially lose this one and push this one. I think we just let it play out. Let's see. So they do drop a card. It's Arnim Zola. Interesting. Which destroyed their White Tiger, and it's going to destroy their Tiger Spirit. So interesting, to say the very least. Arnim Zola is really hard to control and know exactly what it's going to do. It's really hard to anticipate, especially with that lane being as low. Like maybe they were aiming for the Jubilee. That way it would pull over into that mid lane. They could summon a card. Maybe they were hoping for Wong and then Jubilee so that it would summon 2 cards. I don't know. Okay, so let's try and get a really good last game. We need one to finish off the deck highlight. We have Lady Sif. Let's go ahead and play her. See what she discards. If she discards the Odin, we know that we're going to be able to cap out a lane pretty quickly as long as we draw into our Ghost Rider piece of the combo. And I think that to that point, we go ahead and we drop our Jubilee whenever we can next turn to pull additional cards in, to thin out our deck. So I'm going to invest my resources into Lemuria, because they're going to try and buff up their collector, either through like discard or through something. And we got a pretty high roll in Drax because they did play a card in that lane and they get Patriot. So unless they have tokens, that is an awful card. So if they have an Ultron, I mean, maybe it's great. But let's go ahead and drop our Jubilee. That's going to pull one of our cards in, most likely Chavez. And that thins our deck. That gives us an additional chance to draw in our Ghost Rider. And then Lockjaw is not a bad target whenever you summon him with Jubilee, because it cycles your Jubilee immediately. And you get that upside. So we pulled Patriot over, which is not great, but it's not terrible either. And so we did draw in one of the cards that was not the Ghost Rider piece of the combo. So we have 3 cards. We have Chavez, which We have drawn a card since then. It has a pretty good shot at being Chavez at this point. And then otherwise we have what? Otherwise we have Ghost Rider, Chavez, and then one other card in Iron Man. So I think either way, if we do resummon Odin and they drop a card here, that's going to re-trigger Drax's ability. So it's not that big of a deal. It's not the end of the world. So we do draw into our Chavez. I think we just massively outpower them here. And that's one of the beauties of this deck, is that it just is so strong. It's really hard to compete with. And we're going to snap. They're probably not going to let us resolve this, but we're going to snap. We'll resummon Odin here. He's going to re-trigger and either drop our Hulk or our Infinite, so we can swing this lane. And then unless they can just work miracles, I don't see a play line where they can do otherwise. So they would have to drop like a Shang-Chi in one of these two, and that takes up 4 of your 6 mana. And so they still Devil Dinosaurs. So maybe they can't drop a Moon Girl on the same turn as Mystique anymore. So not going to be enough in... Okay, they do take this left lane. I'll give them that. They take it by 1. But these other two, they're just not able to keep up with the raw power output of the large minion deck. So I am going to go ahead and end the video here. So for you guys that are looking for a deck to climb with when the season resets, it really truly depends on what you are running up against. If you are running up against swarms, maybe you go with something that features a Killmonger with Wave. If you're going up against kind of a variety of things, this deck performs very, very well against just about any card other than Shang-Chi. It can pump out enough power that it's usually able to outpower any of the other decks that we've seen up to this point. I mean, of course, there are certain scenarios where you have like a double onslaught and the lane becomes 307, but for a normal game, it is able to output those other decks in a pretty consistent way. So there's some pretty cheap combos here, but if you're looking to climb and climb quickly, to max out, get infinite, I'm going to plan on doing just an all-out rush. I'm going to cover the new card from the season pass tomorrow, but after that I'm gonna just rush and see how quickly I can climb. And this is one of the decks that I'm going to be using to do that. I do plan on kind of cycling through a couple of different decks depending on what I'm going up against. That way it's not like I'm bumping up against a brick wall. If something is not working, change it a little bit. Maybe look at it from a different angle and find a couple of different decks that rotate well. But with that, we are going to end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This has been TLSG. Please let me know what you thought of the video. Please let me know what you thought of the quality. Is the sound okay? Is the video quality, has it improved? I think I was able to get it to improve with the computer switch. It improved a bit, but I don't know how noticeable it'll be on the YouTube platform. So please let me know what you guys think. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.